let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live, and we're talking about today's hottest topics on policy, faith, and the culture, always from a biblical, constitutional, historical perspective. My name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. We're here with David Barton, America's premier historian. Jonathan Ritchie back in studio with us, and later in the program, we're going to have Congressman Bob McEwen. We're going to be talking about some of these outlandish socialist policies that have been passed by states that are destroying economies and typically creating an elitist group through, for the government and government employees that the rest of us pay for. And actually, this interview and this program we recorded a couple of weeks ago, and because of the coronavirus and things changing and all that, we're just now able to air this particular program. So it was recorded before the chaos, but it is going to be so on point. It's the exact same thing. You have all these government experts and elected officials that are making you stay at home and destroying your business. While it doesn't affect their paycheck one bit, they get to continue getting paid, and an awful lot of government employees, school employees, and others getting basically a paid vacation, while millions of small businesses are absolutely decimated right now through these overreaching government reactions to the coronavirus. And as you know, we've talked about it on the program, we think things should be done. Government has a proper role. It has a function in this. We should intervene in pandemics, but there are balanced, rational responses that would not destroy the economy, and we have just gone way overboard, and it comes from that mindset of government bureaucrats and politicians tending to think they know better than everyone else. I think what I've seen in the Tea Party movement 10 years ago, and even just the grassroots folks that are involved in the political realm right now, of all the things that really get them boiling, it's when politicians pass laws and say, this is best for you. You're going to live under this. Oh, but it's not good enough for me, so I'm going to have another plan. Sort of like they did with Obamacare and insurance. A lot of other examples of that, but it's just that elitist mentality of the politicians saying, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We'll tell you what's best for you, but we get to live under different laws.
I mean, if I was in their position, I'm just kidding, yeah.
We're not making you king for a day.
Yeah, you just disqualified yourself with that opening statement.
Now, wait a second. The youth will lead the kingdoms. The Bible says something about that, right? From the mouth of babes, wisdom reigns, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Or is that just in my
Jonathan
Bible?
got killed.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Jonathan died. David became. I don't know. I just thought that was appropriate.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, this goes back to a principle on the schoolyard, right? If the teacher's being unfair by making me come in from recess, but Timmy's over there getting to play for a little bit of extra time, that sure makes me hate Timmy, or whoever else it is. So, it's just
it really does create dissension. I mean, when you have a double standard and people aren't treated the same, what you do is you engender bitterness toward that group, whatever group that is. And if you start treating one group specially and the other group you treat just in a different way, it really breaks up the nation. And that's one of the problems the progressives have, is they're always dividing us into groups and having one group get benefits that other groups don't get. One group gets protection on hate crime laws, but not everybody gets protection on hate crime laws. And one group gets better tax breaks than everybody else does. And one group we're going to penalize more and really hit them with taxes harder than other groups. When you do that, you really divide the nation into segments, and you become a bunch of little microcosms. You're no longer a unified nation. And it's one of the things that, even in the Bible, Jesus said, hey, you see the religious leaders, the Pharisee leaders, do what they say, don't do what they do, because they don't follow their own teachings. Now, they're teaching the Bible, that's good. Follow the Bible, do not do what they do. And that you don't like that. People don't like hypocrisy. They don't like being treated differently from all others. And so this is what happened with the federal government particularly. People started rising up, Rick, as you said, Tea Party, 10, 15 years ago. I hate the government passing laws on me and exempting themselves from that laws. That's just not right. They ought to live under the laws that they pass. And so they gave themselves better health care. They exempted themselves from Obamacare. They gave themselves better retirement plans than we could possibly get. And that really started a rise among the people to get those bums out of office. And that's where a lot of term limits came from, was this thing of they're treating themselves differently than they treat us. And so that's not a healthy thing. And particularly as you look at the nation, we've always believed in equality. And we didn't care whether you're in office or out of office. Everybody should be treated the same. It's a real problem that's developed in America, and it divides the nation rather than unites the nation.
Well, it comes back to having good people in office that don't consider themselves better than everybody else and to be treated differently, but also comes back to our own education about these issues and how the system works, which is what this program's all about. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back, folks. You're listening to WallBuilders Live. The Founding Fathers of America made a habit of reading through the Bible once a year. There's no better source of wisdom, and it is applicable to every issue in our lives. What a great time for us as American citizens to take this time. If you've got extra time at home now, if you're quarantined at home and you're looking for something to do, what better thing could there be to do than to read through the Bible, maybe for the first time in your life? I tried to make this a habit several years ago, and I had a new tool to start doing that with, and it was called the Founders Bible. It gave me a chance not only to read through the Bible once a year, but also to learn history while I was doing that. And what I love about the Founders Bible is that as I'm reading that scripture, then all of a sudden there'll be an article inserted right there by that scripture about what the Founding Fathers learned from that specific verse or chapter and how they applied it to launch our nation. It's a really fun way to learn. It's incredibly empowering, and it has answers for today. The Bible is full of all the right answers for today. In fact, it's the only source that has all the right answers. So if you haven't read through the Founders Bible, I challenge you and encourage you, get a copy of the Founders Bible today. It's available at wallbuilders.com, and we even have it a digital version, so you can do this on your phone or iPad or computer. Check out the Founders Bible today. Make it a part of your regular reading throughout the year, but right now is a great opportunity to read through the Founders Bible. Check it out today at wallbuilders.com. Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us today. Looking at everything from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective. Our topic of the day is politicians that pass laws that they don't have to live under, but they force on everybody else. So how about a historical look on this, David? Has it always been that way in the U.S.?
Well, when you look back to our history, because we had kings, the kings often exempted themselves or their people from whatever laws they had. So that's where John Adams, when we finally got the American Constitutional Republic done, he said that we've created a government of laws, not of men. Because King George III could ignore whatever law he wanted to or exempt himself or his officials from it. You have the right of habeas corpus unless you're one of my guys. And then, everything was all goofed up. There were double standards everywhere. And so by creating a constitutional republic, they had set forth a uniform law. And that's the cool thing about the Bible, is I don't care what station in life you are, you're still bound by moral laws such as the Ten Commandments. You don't say that, well, because I'm mayor of the city, I don't have to live by the law that says don't commit adultery or whatever that is. I mean, choose any of the 10. They apply to everyone. So God's laws apply universally. If you're really poor, if you're really rich, you still tithe. It's 10%. Now, the rich will always pay more than the poor because 10% of a whole lot's a whole lot more than 10% of nearly nothing. So if you only make $10 a year, you're going to pay $1 a year. If you make $10 million a year, you're going to pay $1 million a year. But everybody's treated the same. God gave the same standard, and that's the way America was founded. That Constitutional Republic and that statement by John Adams is so good. A government of laws, not of men. You can't just exempt yourself because you want to do something different, and you can't just say, well, I'm higher than the rest of the people, and they need to live under this law, but not me because I put in so much more service as a congressman. I need to be rewarded different. No, that's not it. So the concept of equality that we got from the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal and they're endowed with certain inalienable rights. You don't get more rights because you're a congressman or a mayor or a judge or whatever it is. You get the same amount of rights everybody else does and the same rights everybody else does. That creates really so much more cohesion and stability in a nation, so much more respect for individual fellow citizens when you see them as equal with you rather than above you or different from you. And so that brings a nation of stability and a lot less turmoil.
Yeah, Mr. David, and you see that carried through that founding period, right? You've got George Washington's farewell address where he talks about how, quote, right, we're protected by equal laws of a common government. And I think Washington's hitting at a really important idea, right?
That's a cool quote. Read that again.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that one. Read that. See, this is why you spend all the time at the library researching. This is good stuff. Read that again.
We're protected by equal laws of a common government, right? And it goes back to what you mentioned of having equal laws means we have that unity of a nation, right? It's not you against me. We're all in this thing together. We have something in common, and that's our government institutions. So if they're protecting me just the same as they're protecting you, just the same as they're protecting our neighbor down the street, we're all having equal kind of invested interest to protect those institutions, to keep them standing. And you see that actually very similarly reflected in the Constitution, right? When the 14th Amendment comes around, it kind of switches the words around, but it's actually really close to Washington's original wording from his farewell address.
So obviously the intent was the same. It said it a little different, but the intent's the same.
Exactly right. And it says, obviously, it sets out liberty, property, everybody has due process of the law, nobody has the right to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, right? And I don't see why, a political class would be any different from the citizen class. Why is something so good that I'm going to exclude myself from it? If it's really a good law, I would think I would want myself to be under it as well.
Yeah, it should. If it's good, it should apply equally to all of us, and we should want it to happen. That's what representative government is all about. Quick break. Bob McEwen is going to be with us when we come back from the break. Bob's a former congressman from Ohio, great friend of the program, and frequent speaker to our legislators conference. And we've got a question from our audience that actually fits this very topic. Stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live. Hey friends, it's Rick Green from WallBuilders Live, and I have had so many requests about what in the world can we be studying at home right now. I got the kids at home. They're normally in school, or if you homeschool, you're looking for additional material. Room Schoolhouse. It is a great new series WallBuilders is putting out where you literally get a tour of the WallBuilders library as Tim Barton and Jonathan Ritchie bring history to life. There's a couple of resources on this. You can go to YouTube and search for WallBuilders and look for Room Schoolhouse. You can go to our Facebook page and get it right there on Facebook as we do it live each Monday and sometimes additional days from there. And then you can also just go to wallbuilders.com. Scroll down to the bottom and we'll be posting the videos as they come out. This is such a great way to learn and a great way for you to share with others. Gather the family around, watch the Room Schoolhouse, and learn some great history. It'll be vitally important to restoring our nation and bringing back these principles that made America great in the first place. Check it out, Room Schoolhouse at wallbuilders.com. Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Always good to have former Congressman Bob McEwen with us, our resident expert on all things economics. I still borrow more from you than David. Don't tell him. Bob, thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure. Great to be with you, Rick.
Hey, we had a question, and as usual, David, Tim, and I said, okay, we got to get Bob on to answer this question. And it was from one of our listeners. Basically, had a discussion with someone in their family about how government employees seem to have far better benefits that we pay for as taxpayers than you typically get in the market, including sometimes they don't even have to pay into Social Security if they don't want. I didn't realize that one, but basic question is, why? Why do we have a better setup for those that are working for the government than the private market?
Well, as you know, Social Security has to do with what we call socialism. That's where government control, and everyone has to do it. And so prior to 1935, people had individual retirement accounts or not at all. And the federal government established the Social Security Administration for the purpose of saying that anybody in the country that went to work had to pay into a retirement fund or a Social Security fund, which would provide a minimum benefit in order to, which are called survival benefits, just enough to survive, not enough to necessarily live happily in retirement, but there would be people that wouldn't be homeless or on the street as a result. This was in the midst of the Depression. They couldn't tell individual states or municipalities what to do in those days. The federal government was separate, so the states did what they wanted to do, and that's the way it was. But over time, as the state systems have gotten in trouble, little by little, they've opted to go onto the Social Security program, and so most of the state and local employees are a part of the Social Security retirement program, and the local states don't supply their own retirement. California, which is what your caller was interested in, California has an unbelievable system, and of course, they're $2 trillion in debt and all of the problems that go with that. But most of the states do not have a separate program, and for the federal employees,
but by the way, Bob, so of course in California that's working so well for them. They're not only going broke, but there's nobody homeless in San Francisco. There's no one on the streets, so they don't have
remarkable?
Yeah, it's not exactly, but anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, but that's really a real peccadillo for me. I just am, most of the things that I can come up with that offend me about what's happening in America, taking the Ten Commandments off the walls and not being able to pray in schools and having homeless people on our streets when we didn't for over 200 years, all of the things that abortion and all the rest, all of these things have come not through the legislature, as you know, Rick. They've come from the courts.
Yeah.
And that's where the fight is. And that's what you're going to hear in this presidential year, because the president has begun to restore America to go to rehear some of those cases. And the Lemon case that said that you couldn't have religious expression on the courthouse lawn and things, that was repealed just a few weeks ago. And as we start to go back through those, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that a teacher can't have a Bible on her desk, and there's nothing in the Constitution that says you shouldn't tell children, thou shalt not steal, or thou shalt not kill. So as we reelect the president to go back to doing that, one of the things I want to say is when they said that if a person was not a threat to society, you couldn't incarcerate them. We had a poorhouse. I went back and checked in my home county, and the population of our county when they just formed a state was 3,000. And the first thing they did was build a poorhouse for people that couldn't care for themselves or indigent children. We didn't have homelessness in a Christian America. But our main point here is having government control and help people that are in poverty. And in the case of California, those state employees, as I understand, do not participate in Social Security. They have a much more elaborate system that the Sacramento keeps pouring upon them, and as a result, they're in financial difficulty. But one of the ones that you'll get on the internet quite a bit is that the federal employees had their own retirement system, so therefore calling it Social Security or calling it the federal, it sounds like it's really out of the same pot, since they both work for the same Department of the Treasury. And so the option was given that they could have their own retirement program, but for Congress that sounded a little ornery, and so they've done away with that. And congressmen have to pay Social Security and receive Social Security. If they wish to have their own retirement program, then they can buy into the government retirement program if they wish. It's an 8% contribution, and for some of us that were young and with children, we couldn't afford the 8% and didn't do it. So I didn't take the congressional retirement because it was unaffordable in my case. So I hope that answers the question as to why some people don't have to pay Social Security. There's a very few remaining numbers of state and local people, of government employees, that opt to have their own local government provision as opposed to the federal Social Security program.
Well, and I'm so glad it took us down the road to California, because I would ask you, is California and San Francisco and the crisis of all the things that are falling apart there, what does that tell us about socialism in America? It has been tried, and we're seeing the result. Is that not true?
Oh, it's so tragic. It just makes you want to cry. So just look at a movie from 15 or 20 years ago. In California, the Golden State, it has a gross domestic product as large as France. It doesn't have a Navy. It doesn't have an Air Force. It doesn't have embassies all around the world. The state should be overflowing in money. And yet, because of the socialists, if you see the just total incompetence that went into Sacramento and what they've done. Now, the state always had Republican governors. It had the finest education system in America. All the time that I can remember, it had free college education, and it had the best school system in the country. That's what all the school books looked to for the rest of the United States. But now they've had back-to-back Democrats, and you see what is happening to the state. It's in free fall. The educational system has gone from number 1 to number 37. A third of all the people in America on welfare are in the state. And it's just, when you drive down the highway, even the green signs on the interstate that every place are brilliant, they're all faded out and worn out in California. Liberals can destroy a 2-car funeral. They can foul up anything. And, of course, we see it, and it's so tragic.
It is absolutely tragic, but you're so right. How'd you say that? They can foul up a 2-car funeral.
That's exactly right.
So what can they do with an entire nation? I mean, look at what they've done with a state in California. We hand this over to a guy like Bernie Sanders, and socialism is all across the country. It'd be a complete disaster. We're no longer the hope of the world. We're going to be a burden to the world. Bob, you're such a blessing, man. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for taking some time to help us there answer this question, and I'm looking forward to the next time we get to chat.
It's always my pleasure. Thanks. All the best.
Stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live.
This is Tim Barton from WallBuilders with another moment from American history. Too often today, history education excludes great black heroes from the American founding, such as Lemuel Haynes. Haynes, abandoned as a baby, pioneered churches across upper New England. He became the first black American to pastor a white congregation, to receive an honorary master's degree, and to be ordained by a mainstream Christian denomination, the Congregationalists. He was a soldier during the American Revolution, and in his churches on George Washington's birthday, he regularly preached sermons honoring George Washington. Even late in his life, he expressed his willingness to go back to battle if necessary to protect America, which he called a sacred ark. American history is filled with numerous examples of black heroes who are largely ignored by mainstream education today. For more information about Pastor Lemuel Haynes and other colonial patriots, go to WallBuilders.com.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Thanks to Bob McEwen for joining us today, and back with Jonathan Ritchie and David Barton. Okay, guys, I mean, Bob always lays it out in simple terms, but it really comes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the program. We need good public officials that don't see government as the solution to everything and then force it on us.
I'm still laughing over liberals can destroy a two-car funeral. That was great. Yeah, when liberals get in charge. Boy, I did not realize the stats he shared on California.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, California's gone from number 1 in education, number 37. And 1/3 of all the people on welfare in America are in California.
That's amazing. I wonder. It made me wonder, and I didn't find an answer readily online. I would have had to do math, and that's really hard for me. But maybe somebody really smart is listening to this. It made me wonder, what would America's ranking be worldwide if we cut off California? Like, right, if 1/3 of all welfare is coming out of California, if the education has
Good
fallen,
question.
where would America's global stats be if we didn't have the $2 trillion of debt coming out of California and the 1/3 of welfare? Oh my gosh.
Well, it's interesting too. You know, Bob pointed out they've had after all these Republican governors, they've had 2 Democrat governors in a row, and boy, how quickly they fell. You know, and they've gone in the wrong direction. Why would you want to be the poop capital of the world? You know, San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco. I didn't just leave my heart in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. So it's amazing what leadership does, and when you get the wrong kind of thinking in there, and they start moving in different directions away from equal concept of everybody being the same, whether it be on health care, retirement benefits, or whatever it is, you get that elitist mentality in there that we need to tell you what to do. Well, those that are good at that, they're not good at running the states or nations based on statistics. They're telling everybody else what to do, and look how their state's going down. And, even with gun control, they're going to tell us what we can and can't do with our guns, and those mentality people have the highest crime rates in their areas.
Yeah.
Why not learn from so many of the red governors in red states where crime is different than it is in Chicago or New York or so many other places? It's crazy, but I did not realize California had fallen so quickly from such a height to where they are now. And that's, again, that elitist kind of mentality you get with elected officials.
Well, I've said it a couple times. I think it's worth our listeners taking on the responsibility of this, because, again, we can complain about what's happening, but it really does fall on our own shoulders and making sure that we're choosing good leadership. So, hey, to our California friends out there, no pun intended, but the mess you're in comes back to the citizens. You got to elect good folks, and that means being active. That means churches engaging, not hiding from the system.
And by the way, Rick, I've got to say, Tim is over right now leading a tour group in Israel, and so virtually every year through WallBuilders and others, we take these tour groups to Israel. And I just got back from one that we had in Israel. It had a California church that was part of that group. And they're super conservative. They're up in the northern part of California. They're at Mount Lassen. And they were talking about the fact that, California's crazy, but we're not leaving the state. We're going to change the state.
Awesome.
We're going to stay here and change it. And so myself and another guy, we've been asked to get into California and show them how to start recruiting candidates and how to start doing alternative media and how to start doing things to take their state back. And so while Texas and others have benefited from red people leaving a blue state, there's a lot of red people still in that blue state that want to turn that state red again. And I don't mean in terms of Republican, Democrat. I mean red and blue in terms of liberal and conservative. Who cares the party? We've talked before that our friend in Parliament in Australia, he believes exactly what he believes. And over there, they're called liberals if you believe conservative values. So what we're talking about is really moving it more in a constitutional, biblical direction. And even California is starting to see an uprising to do some of that, which is really good.
That's the good news out there, and there is a lot of that happening. We get to see it because we travel the country and get to visit with folks, especially in California. I mean, it's some of the places like California and Oregon and Washington, Massachusetts, some of the states that are in the most trouble, where people really are looking for better answers and looking for how to return to the foundational principles that made the nation great in the first place. And do we need those principles now more than maybe any time in my life? I mean, here we are watching this absolute handing over of liberty for a perceived better safety, but we don't even know yet if that's going to be the case. So it's a really important time for us to get back to the basics and know what the biblical, constitutional, historical perspective is on all of these issues. And certainly that means studying the Constitution. It means reading, certainly reading through the Bible and looking for wisdom there, because that's where all the answers actually are. That's why I really encourage you to get a Founder's Bible and read through that thing and get not only God's Word that is always applicable to everything, but then get the specific application through the eyes of the Founding Fathers. The articles in there are just amazing as they give you that application of God's Word to what society should look like and how they used it to form America and form our nation and create these documents that protect those liberties, these documents that we seem to be ignoring right now. So study those things. Founders Bible is a great place to go, and then constitutioncoach.com. By the way, Founders Bible you get at wallbuilders.com. That's wallbuilders.com. And then go to constitutioncoach.com if you'd like to sign up to host a WallBuilders Constitution class. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and you use our tools to teach your friends and family. Right now, while you're stuck at home, you get a Zoom class going and you get folks educated. It's a perfect time while people are asking about federalism and constitutional powers and Fed versus state and can these governors do these things. All those questions are being asked. You be one of the ones that helps to bring the answers to your friends and family. Check it out at constitutioncoach.com. Be sure to visit wallbuilders.com to get those other materials, and then make sure you visit wallbuilderslive.com and make that contribution today so that our radio program can reach more people with the truth. You come alongside us and be a part of the solution. We sure appreciate you. Thanks for listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.